This is about the book, The Education of Henry Adams. One day I was flipping through the channels of the TV and I came across Charlie Rose interviewing someone who turned out to be a justice of the Supreme Court. I think it was Stephen Breyer. I stuck with them for a while because their conversation was nimble and pointed, and Rose asked Breyer if he could recommend a single book for young adult readers, one that might act as a kind of guide for them. Without hesitation, Breyer said, "The Education of Henry Adams." And that surprised me, and Rose as well. "Really?" he said. "Oh, yes," said Breyer. "It's all in there." I had read the book years ago and still owned a copy. I found it and read it again. I might not have liked it as well the second time, as far as pure enjoyment goes, because it's long and dense, the prose convoluted and introspective, like that of Henry James, but I could see why Breyer admired it so. The chief wonder of the book, for me, is that it is the ruminations of a brilliant, if mildly cantankerous mind, a very learned one, highly educated, one would say, with tremendous subtlety and precision coupled with depth and breadth, which yet persists at every turn to insist that he is ignorant, inadequate, and incapable of being educated. This has its humorous aspects, and it sometimes feels as if Adams is creating a blueprint for Dada and the absurdist theater. He says he was stuffed with an 18th century education that was of no use whatsoever in the 19th century. The more he was educated, the less he understood of himself, he wrote. The education he had received bore little relation to the education he needed, he said, and upon graduating from Harvard, he wrote, as yet he knew nothing. Education had not begun. Because of his birth into the patrician Adams family, he had a front row seat in history. His exact place in it was one of impassive obscurity, often serving as a private secretary to his father, a career diplomat. His lifelong goal was to be able to account for himself, to himself, and to invent a formula of his own for his universe. In each of these, he accorded himself a failure. It is no surprise that the chapter entitled Failure is about his teaching at Harvard. The one thing he does learn, for certain, is that the world is really a poor place to obtain a decent education. There are many impediments to his education. Politics is one. He writes, "It is difficult, impossible, to map a coherent strategy or theory when those about dissemble, deceive, lie, contradict, and do not, in truth, fully understand what they are doing." Philosophy can only suggest unintelligible answers to unsolvable problems. Religion is no better. Society promotes ignorance. Technological innovations, science, only confuse because, being so new, they are causes with unpredictable effects. As for the Civil War, the few people who thought they knew something were more in error than those who knew nothing. Education was a matter of life and death, and all the education in the world would have helped nothing. Ignoramus, he says, we know nothing. Ignorabimus, too, we shall never know. Human intelligence is not capable of controlling or understanding the world, even sporadically. I believe that Tolstoy shared this view. And he writes this, "Power is poison." At the time he was talking about politics. He said that whenever a friend of his was put into a position of power, he lost a friend. Near the end of his book, he is considering other kinds of power: coal power, steam power, the dynamo, X-rays, and radiation. And it is clear that all of these new forces at work, power, created less understanding than ever. As man became more powerful, he became less able to lead or to follow, to think, to act or react, or to do anything at all, except eventually to lash out and destroy, then pick up the pieces of whatever is left and begin again. Adams admires the French cathedrals, monuments to the devotion and worship of the Virgin. He compared this to the American fascination with power in all of its aspects. He ended his book by celebrating the belief, the hope, that his friend, through his diplomatic efforts, had brought peace to most of the world, a peace so artfully constructed that it would endure. Of course, what the century brought were terrible, monstrous wars of unprecedented magnitude. Peace did not prevail. Power did. Power unleashed and killing. Adams, overcome with loyalty for his friend and his own fond hope, a speck of optimism, embraced peace, but he knew what would come from power. Poor doomed man is all we can say. The rest is silence.